There's phage therapy also against another bacteria, where Darwinium or in apples and pears. So there was a pretty good control model system. This is work that I did. This is for my master's actually. So that project is continuing. And they are doing field trials right now, and I've heard that they are getting pretty good efficacy. An issue with doing phage therapy in plant agriculture is formulation of the phage, because you're just going to be spraying this stuff out there. So there are a lot of phages that don't handle being desiccated very well, and they don't handle sitting on a leaf dried out with the sunshine on all day. So the formulation of the phage is important. So there are things actually that you can put in that will stabilize the phage quite a bit, such as clays. Casein has been shown to work reasonably well also as a stabilizer. So you have a mixture of phage, a solution of phage in a stabilizing formulation. Now there was some work going on a few years ago at the University of Maryland, where they wanted to look at phages to control rhizobial modulation in plants. So I believe that a system of soybeans. So the problem that they have is that you can have fields of soybeans that are the field is already colonized with a bacterial strain of rhizobium, which is a very good colonizer of roots, but it's a really bad fixer of nitrogen. So you put your soybeans in there, and they'll all be aggressively colonized with this terrible strain, and they won't do well. So they were looking into a system, and they had just some pilot data back when I saw this at a conference presentation of spraying the field with phage that would kill the aggressively colonizing with bad nitrogen mixing strain, and then they can replace that with their less aggressively colonizing strain, but one which is a better nitrogen mixer. So they could knock down the resident bacterial populations, they could replace it with the bacterial population that they were interested in. And of course, the strain of data that they replaced the original strain with was resistant to the phage that they used to treat.
In an experiment like that, how infectious does the phage remain when you spray it? How sensitive is it to the environment?
It depends. So this was just pilot data for them. The phages actually tend to be more stable in the soil than they are, say, on aerial plant tissue. So, but they said that they were able to get, their measurement output was actually with plant yield. So in the one the tree was in the plot where the tree was failed, they did have phage, but they did have a better yield than they had with the untreated plot. So, but I think their goal was actually to coat the seeds with the phage, right? So you didn't have to do all this spraying. That you would just sell it. That would just be the product. Would be the seed coated with that phage already. So you just have to. The idea is just you want to knock out the local bacterial population rather than every bacteria living in the entire field. So there's also been quite a bit of work looking at phages to control pathogens in food. So they've been shown to have varying ability. The problem with food, it really depends a lot on the food. So if you imagine you have a pound of hamburger, things don't diffuse probably very well in the middle of a pound of hamburger. So people have put in phage to treat, like this is all just spike samples. They put in a known amount of, for instance, E. coli 157, put phage in, and see what kind of success you get. It's pretty variable, and occasionally they'll be able to knock down the E. coli 157 population in the food, but they'll have to incubate the food at 37 degrees for a day. In which case it's not. Yeah, so it's maybe not. It works. It's good in principle, but it's not a good practical use. But there have been some successful uses of phage in foods, particularly on cut fruit, like treatment of salmonella and also listeria on, say, cut melon slices. And there is influence by the food itself on this activity. So, for instance, in this paper, they tried melon with cantaloupe and apples. So it works well in cantaloupe, but not well in apples because the pH is too low, and the phages don't do well. So you could potentially select for pH, a more acid tolerant phage, theoretically. And also using phage to eliminate Listeria monocytogenes in soft cheeses. This is like a raw milk cheese. These are big in Europe. We have unpasteurized milk cheese. And so adding the phage in with the starter at the beginning of fermentation, they have to actually eliminate the listeria population in the final product. So there are some applications where it's going to be useful more than others, and particularly when you have foods that are unprocessed or very lightly processed. So if you have, like, say, a can of tuna or a can of Spam, which you've already cooked at 120 degrees for an hour, adding phage to it will be redundant at that point. But when you have very lightly or very unprocessed foods, then it would be more useful. And there is actually growing consumer interest in less processed and lightly processed foods. Spam is not as big a seller as it used to be. So this is actually some phage products that are available for human consumption right now, somewhere in the world. So this is something called the Phage Biology. Of course, it's not sold here. It's sold in Poland and in Russia and Georgia. This was developed in Georgia, and this is a very clever delivery device, which is a mixture of 21 phages plus ciprofloxacin plus a local analgesic. It's all impregnated into these little bandage-looking pads, which are I can't remember exactly what the matrix is made out of. It's like a methacrylate polymer. So it's a hydrated polymer, which they're also able to biodegrade. So they're impregnated into this, and this is for surface wounds and burns. So you can cut it whatever shape you want, you put it on the wound, and there's actually a paper that came out a couple of years ago where they had their clinical trial for this, and they report very good efficacy. But this is a trial which is based more on case reports than rather than being a placebo-controlled trial. But they think it works well enough that this is actually part of the standard field kit for the Russian Army. So that's one of the biggest clients. And this is the Phage Bioderm, well, not the Bioderm, but it's the powder version of this. So this can be put into deeper wounds, and it's more like a microencapsulation method, but it's using the same material. So they have this, there are some patents on this also. So in this case,
I'm sorry, you said there's phage in there, phage, and what else did you say is in there?
and also ciprofloxacin, a small amount of ciprofloxacin, and like a local anesthetic. I can't remember, it's like lidocaine or something like that, which is just for comfort, pretty much. So the Georgian approach and the Russian approach for these kind of commercial products is, you don't have time. As a commercial product, you can't go back to the lab and do a bunch of bacteriology on what's colonizing the wound. So you take the phages, which they think will cover, say, 80% of all the bacteria they're likely to encounter in the field. And they do have to occasionally reformulate these things, like on an annual basis. They have to reformulate the phages that are in them. But this is expected to give pretty good coverage, and they have the ciprofloxacin in there, which is essentially there for anything which is not one of the bacteria that 21 phages will cover, or with a different strain. Oh, sorry, but this one here, this is something called Listex, and this is a company in Belgium called EDI Food Safety, and they are apparently selling, this is their anti-listeria phage product, which is for food processing use. So last year, or I believe it was 2006, the FDA did give approval to phages for use in foods. They have a GRAS rating, a GRAS rating, which is generally recognized as safe. It means that they can be eaten and they can be added to foods as a food additive. And that's like a big step forward, really, in regulatory issue of phage therapy. So you can apparently, I haven't tried it, you can apparently buy this, and they will mail you a bottle of their listeria phage for use in your food plant, in your raw milk tea.